This is what you do when you've just found that statement handbag on eBay and you want to build an entire wardrobe around it. You start selling to keep buying. Yep, on eBay. Over that all-black everything phase? List it and buy all the color. Feeling more vintage than ever? It's out with the new and in with the pre-loved. Next thing you know, you've refreshed your wardrobe basically without spending a dime. Yeah, eBay, the place to buy and sell new, pre-loved, vintage, and rare fashion.
Earning your degree online doesn't mean you have to go about it alone. At Capella University, we're here to support you when you're ready. From enrollment counselors who get to know you and your goals, to academic coaches who can help you form a plan to stay on track. We care about your success and are dedicated to helping you pursue your goals. Going back to school is a big step, but having support at every step of your academic journey can make a big difference. Imagine your future differently at capella.edu.
Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to Back to the Show. Thank you so much for clicking on today's episode. It has been kind of a rough couple days, and I'm even surprising myself that I'm on the mic. You guys probably aren't surprised because it's Thursday, and Thursdays are upload days. But I'm really surprising myself that I'm on the mic. And if my sister comes out of her room, she'll be like, "Oh my gosh, you're recording?" Yeah, I'm recording. So I'm in a rough spot, to be completely honest. I'm in a very tough mental headspace, and I have been for probably about 6 weeks now. And so much so that I'm really, I don't know if struggling is the right word, but just confused about my purpose in life. And I think that probably would come as a surprise to a lot of people listening, because I feel like I'm the girl that always has to have it figured out. And I know that I've said on the mic before, like, oh, like, you know, you're in your 20s, you don't have to have it figured out, this, that, and the other thing. But to some degree, I feel like I do have to have it figured out, because people look at me. I'm just going to totally expose myself here. I was talking to this guy on the phone, and I met him on Hinge, and he was like, oh, but like, you have a podcast. And I was like telling him about like my week and stuff. And I was like, yeah, I'm just like, I'm kind of having a rough week. And, you know, he gave me some advice, and then I was like, oh, you know, like, thanks for, you know, giving me advice. And then it was kind of like, oh, well, like, you know, you should be the one giving me advice because you have a podcast. I know that he was just flirting, but I was just kind of like, yeah, that's the problem. Like, I feel like I have to have it all figured out. And I feel like I have to be the one that's giving advice. Like, I don't need to be the advice receiver. Like, I have it figured out, right? Because I have a podcast that automatically makes me qualified at life, I guess. I don't know. And for me, I've been having a tough time admitting that I'm struggling, because if you look at my life from the outside in, it probably looks like I have it figured out. And like, I'm not really the friend that people feel like they have to check up on. Like, I have a lot more outgoing texts than incoming texts. And like, people just really don't check on me. Like, I'm not, because I have it figured out, right? And I definitely do not. And not like my friends are bad people. Like, we all just have our own lives, and like, everybody's kind of just on their own little program. But I think I'm perceived as the person that has it together. So like, I'm cool, I'm good. And that's not always the case. So much so that I almost threw in the towel on the podcast completely. Like, completely just almost decided to quit. And as much as I don't like admitting that I wanted to quit, I think I was kind of masking it as like, oh, it seems to me like the business is declining, and I just feel like I could put my efforts better. I could better allocate my efforts into other things. So much so that I started like applying to jobs again and stuff, which is ridiculous, because I know that I have something here, and I know that I just have to keep pushing, and like, one day it'll be what I dreamed it would be, but just not yet. And that's okay. I think a big piece of the struggle for me has been, I have watched this show grow, and not watched it grow, I've grown with it. And I've really poured my heart and soul into this podcast, and my main focus of the show has really shifted from just talking about my life to talking about my faith and to talking about God. And I feel like that had to happen. It absolutely had to happen because I know that my life is so much better now with Jesus than it is without. And I have to talk about it. Like, I don't want to not talk about it because I just feel so much joy. But then on the flip side of that is I know that my audience has shifted, and this is just gonna be like an honesty hour. I felt like almost angry at God because I was like, okay, well, if I'm talking about you, then I feel like the show's going to grow, right? Because I'm talking about you. Like, that just makes so much sense. But it's actually been not even necessarily the opposite, but I just feel like I've gotten so much more negative feedback, and I don't think I'm equipped to handle that. Like, plain and simple. Like, I don't like when people aren't happy with me. And so I think that's really kind of put me in a bad mental headspace. And then I come back to this whole thing of like, oh, well, I thought that I healed from being sad. I thought that I healed from being anxious. I thought that I healed from like the trauma of really negative feedback. And suddenly, like, it was just affecting me so much more than I could have ever imagined. And I was really just sad and confused and angry. And I was kind of like, this is supposed to be my calling. Like, the podcast is something that I just feel like is so right, but it feels like it's going sideways. It feels like everything's going completely south, and I'm just like watching it like crumble, which isn't true. Like, I'm so just being dramatic. Like, it's not crumbling, it's fine. But I just feel like because I'm receiving negative feedback for sharing my faith, I'm like, things are crumbling. And I just know that that's like, it's not really true, but it feels that way. And then I had to just remind myself that, like, okay, God never said that our calling would be easy. He never said that spreading his love was going to be easy. He never said that sharing our testimony was going to be easy. What he did say, however, was that if the world hates you, remember that it hated me first. John 15:18, if the world hates you, remember that it hated me first. Jesus makes it very clear all throughout the gospel that sharing your faith is not easy. And so because for me, it started to feel so overwhelming of like the criticism, I felt like I was doing something wrong. From a business perspective, it doesn't look good. Like, if someone were to come in and look at my numbers, they'd be like, oh, you're driving your business into the ground by talking about your faith. But then on the flip side, I'm like, but why wouldn't I share my faith? Why wouldn't I talk about God? Like, I don't know. And then I keep just going around and around and around in my head of like, what am I supposed to do? So then I was thinking, okay, well, the only logical thing to do then would be to just stop the podcast entirely, which I just have to laugh at now because that doesn't make any sense. Like, why would I stop the podcast entirely? That literally makes no sense. So first and foremost, I need your help. I need your help. If you're listening to this and you like the show and you enjoy the show, I really need your help. Let me know what you want me to talk about. If there's a verse that you want me to dive into, if there's a certain situation in your life that you want me to chat about, let me know. If you like the show, please leave a review. I don't think people, I mean, how would you know unless you're in the industry? But like, Apple Podcast reviews weigh so heavily on the success of a show. And so if you feel inclined, please, 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 please leave a review. And that truly helps the show to just reach more people. And it has to do with algorithms and analytics and all that stuff. And so if you like the show, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts and maybe just let me know like why you started listening to the show, why you stayed listening to the show, what you like about the show. I typically don't read reviews, but they play such a big role in helping the show grow. Additionally, I believe so heavily in the power of a referral from a friend. So if you listen to an episode that you truly do enjoy, just text it to a friend and be like, hey, I think that you might like this. I think that you might relate to this, or whatever it is. Just send your friend a text. I personally take advice from word of mouth from people in my everyday life way more seriously than I take advice from anybody online. And so never underestimate the power that your voice has in your circles and the influence that you have on the people around you, because you truly do make an impact on the people around you more than you ever would know.
Sergeant and Mr. Smith, you're gonna love this house.
Bunk beds in a closet?
There's no field manual for finding the right home. But when you do, USAA Homeowners Insurance can help protect it the right way. Restrictions apply.
This is what you do when you've just found that statement handbag on eBay and you want to build an entire wardrobe around it. You start selling to keep buying. Yep, on eBay. Over that all-black everything phase? List it and buy all the color. Feeling more vintage than ever? It's out with the new and in with the pre-loved. Next thing you know, you've refreshed your wardrobe basically without spending a dime. Yeah, eBay, the place to buy and sell new, pre-loved, vintage, and rare fashion.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. With over 122 million parts, you can make sure your number one ride or die stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply.
Discover My Self Le Parfum by YSL Beauty. The new, sensual, and warm intensity enhanced by spicy vanilla bourbon. A fragrance for a man born unapologetically himself. Myself, Yves Saint Laurent.
One little last story here, and then I'm going to probably wrap it up. But the only reason that I'm really on the mic right now is because this morning I really had a shift in perspective. And last week we talked about listening and trying to hear God's voice. And that's something that I've really been working heavily on, but sometimes it just doesn't work. Like sometimes you do all the steps, you do all the things. And if you want to listen to that episode, we'll have it linked in the show notes. It was about blocking out intrusive thoughts and hearing God's voice. And sometimes you do all those things, but you still get the intrusive thoughts and you still feel like God's not talking to you. And I think that's because sometimes he doesn't want to tell you something. He wants to show you something, or he wants to truly just show up for you. And I had a moment today. I'm in the process of beginning to teach yoga for a athletic performance summer camp. I was there this morning just to kind of get the lay of the land as far as like the programming for the camp goes. I participated a little bit in the recovery session today, and which was just like trigger point therapy, some good stretching. When I first went and sat down, I sat in front of, or like next to, 3 girls who I can't quite like pinpoint their ages. I'm like not good at pinpointing ages for like middle and high school kids. I feel like I'm not around them enough to like pinpoint like, oh, like that is definitely like a 12-year-old, you know? But they were probably like 13, 14, probably. So I have like 10 years on them, which is weird because I feel like I was just 14 the other day. The head coach introduced me. I talked a little bit about yoga and kind of like my athletic background. And I was sitting down just like as, you know, we were kind of getting more instruction. And I caught the girls like looking at me. And I was like, okay, if I was 13 and there was a yoga instructor that walked in the room, like what would I think of her? And I thought back to my days on swim team where like the older college kids would come and coach and like all this stuff. And I was like, I always thought that older college kids were so cool, or like just out of college. Like I always thought that like these older college kids were really, really cool. And like, I couldn't wait to be in my 20s. Like when I was little, I was always like, oh, I feel like my 20s are going to be like the best. Cause like I'm going to be on my own. I'm going to have a phone and I'm going to text people and I'm going to drive a car and I'm going to get coffee, probably Starbucks, probably like a Frappuccino because my mom won't let me get Frappuccinos, but I'm probably going to get one because I like one. And I'm probably going to just like be really cool as a 20-year-old, like out of college or something like that. That was probably my headspace. So I always thought that the older kids were really cool. And I started thinking, like, as we were sitting there, we were doing like recovery, And I was in so much pain. And so I just started to try to take my brain other places. And I was like, dang, if I looked at myself, and I'm not saying that these girls at the camp thought that I was cool. They probably didn't care. They were probably too focused on what they were doing and who am I to put words in their mouth or thoughts in their head or whatever. But as I was sitting there, I thought, okay, if I was 13 and I looked at myself now at 24, I'm not saying this like high myself up or brag, but this is like literally just my resume. I have a podcast. I wrote a chapter in a book. I live in an apartment in Annapolis with my younger sister, and I have some of the best friends in the entire world. I get to talk to people for a living to a degree, and I get to train people in fitness. Like if I met myself at 13, if 13-year-old Lily was in the room right now looking at 24-year-old Lily, she would think, why am I going to cry? She would think she's the coolest person in the room. Plain and simple. She would think that she's the coolest person in the room. And if I were to quit the podcast, she would look at me and be like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you've worked so hard for this. Like, why would you want to give this up? Just because some people are mad that you're talking about God? Like, that's really cool. Because like 13-year-old me, like I went to youth group. I played guitar in the worship band. She would have no idea like all the middle stuff that we went through. But she would be like, what you're doing now is really cool. Like, why would you stop doing that? She would be really, really proud. I think too, when you're little, you kind of have an idea of what you want to do. When you grow up, you kind of have an idea of like the direction, the path. And I think that there's always been a seed planted in us. Like God designed us so beautifully, and little kids are so in tune with not only the world around them, but with God. And I just think that like they're just like so pure and like cool and like cute, and they just kind of like know deep down like what they want to do and like who they want to be. And then the world tells them who to be and takes away that coolness and that like pure like love for what they really want to do and be. Like the world takes that away. And so I think if you think back to the version of yourself that you were younger, that's almost like who you're like meant to be, you know? And I think the older that you get, the more you retrain your brain how to be that version of yourself, that pure version of yourself where no one told you what to be, who to be, how to think. So I don't know how this applies to your life. I don't know where you're at. I don't know your headspace right now. But if you're struggling to figure out if you should pursue something or struggling to realize what your calling is, I want you to think back to what you wanted to be when you grew up and know that you're not all grown up yet. So there's still time. There's still so much time. Do what will make your younger self proud. Because I think at the end of the day, like that's kind of our calling. And it kind of depends on how you look at it. But I think God places dreams on our heart and they kind of just follow us. And there's a plan, there's a purpose for your life. And how beautiful will it be to completely fulfill that? That's a wrap on today's episode. Thank you for listening all the way through. I know that this was probably a wave of emotions. I know it was for me. If you guys liked it, please be sure to give it a rating and review. I know we kind of already talked about that, but truly it helps the show more than you would even know. And really just, I would love for the show to reach as many people as possible. And your reviews and your shares really help that to happen. So thank you guys. Love you. Have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you soon.